And I'm here to present or help present today's PropEL Network Quarter 2 network call with everybody. Thank you for joining. Sorry about the slight problems we've had so far this morning. And I think we'll probably kick off with my colleague Ellen Atkin, if that's okay. If you're ready, Ellen, just to start talking about ESG.
That's absolutely fine. So good morning, everyone. I'm Ellen Atkin. I also work at the Valuation Office and I head up the local government sector for the District Valuer Service, which is like the commercial arm of the Valuation Office. So our work is very much valuation heavy, but we kind of get involved in a total mixed bag of different things. So asset work, development work, all manner of things. I've recently completed a master's in sustainability in the built environment. So yeah, I've got some slides to share. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. Just bear with me 2 ticks. Okay, can everyone see the slides?
Yeah, got that, Ellen. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, I can't see hands. It's really informal. So if somebody can just either shout in, or if someone can just monitor the chat and their hands, I'm more than happy to stop at any point whilst going through. So, oh no, I'm hoping this. Oh, hang on, just bear with me one tick. Slideshow. Oh, sorry. Sorry about this. I'm just going to try and present in Teams because I can't see any notes. Okay, the slides should come back up again. Just give me a nod when they're there. Can you see them?
Yes, we've got those.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sustainability and ESG, very much focusing around the built environment. This session is designed probably for the kind of lower level, so the introduction to into sustainability and ESG, giving you kind of a basic understanding of the topic. By the end of the session, you should be able to clearly explain what sustainability and ESG mean in a property context and have awareness of the key legislation, risks and valuation impacts. The focus throughout is knowledge and understanding, so it's not technical detail or any kind of ESG calculations, which you probably will see in other forms. It's quite a hot topic. But as someone working in the built environment, I think we should all understand how sustainability fits into the property life cycle and how it affects professional advice. So first, sustainability in the development process means understanding how decisions are made at site selection, design, construction and operation stages, and how that influences long-term environmental, social and economic outcomes. You should also understand the relationship between property and the environment. Property both impacts the environment through energy use, carbon, materials, and land use, and increasingly is affected by environmental risks such as climate change, flooding, overheating, and regulation. I don't think a day goes by where there isn't another, kind of news headlines where there's floods somewhere or heat waves, which will be nice in Britain. Please come soon. But I think it's very much something that is happening more and more often. Legislation, regulation and taxation is also really important in a property context because it obviously influences investments and decisions made around property. Sustainability, energy, I think anyone in the property environment needs to understand energy efficiency standards, planning requirements, building regulations, and incentives or penalties linked to not meeting that legislation and kind of environmental performance. So we also, I think, need to be aware of how sustainability is measured in completed buildings. So an awareness of metrics, frameworks, operational efficiency, and broader ESG indicators without needing to carry out assessments ourselves. And I think this slide also highlights the role of design, construction, and technology. All of these things are moving at quite a fast pace. How do we become net zero? How do we get our built environment to a point where, kind of it's working as efficiently as possible? So good sustainability outcomes are enabled through design choices, construction methods, and systems such as insulation, ventilation, heating, lighting, and smart technologies. But I think a real key takeaway is it's also how we use a building. You could create the most green, sustainable, net zero building, but it does have to be used in a way that it's designed for. So moving on to the next slide, where are we today? So I think it's really important to understand where we are today and why it is so important for the built environment. So this is just a state from the World Green Building Council that says we are living in a period of environmental breakdown, a climate emergency, mass biodiversity loss, pollution, extinction, the overutilization of natural resources, and a global waste crisis. I think the key message is this isn't a future issue. This isn't something that we have time to plan. We're living in this world now. These challenges are already affecting us every single day, and it's affecting economies across the world in different ways, communities, and very much the property market. For the built environment, this really matters. Buildings consume large amounts of energy and resources. They contribute significantly to carbon emissions and are increasingly exposed to environmental risks such as flooding, overheating, etc. So this is why sustainability, I think, has moved very much it's moved from a nice to have to a core professional consideration. And I think people working and making strategic decisions in property, it's a consideration that they have to take into account. You don't need to be an environmental scientist, but you do need to understand that global environmental pressures are driving change, and they are influencing decisions across the built environment. So ultimately, I would say that our goal to become net zero is very much affecting properties. It's creating risk, and it's changing performance and how we view a property, because how do we get to that point on a sheet where we're actually carbon neutral essentially? So I've got a video. I don't know if this is going to work with the sound. I'll try it. If you don't get the sound, I will just share the slides afterwards and you can watch it at your own. Is the sound? No sound?
There was like a tiny little bit of sound. If you just press, I can hear that. I don't know if anybody else can.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah.
I can hear it.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, key concepts. So the Brundtland Report, published in 1987 by the World Commission on Environment and Development, defines sustainability as development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This definition is important because it underpins almost all modern sustainability policy and thinking, including the approach taken by the RICS for those who are working towards that their APC qualification. And I think something that I think is really stark is this was in 1987. And what have we done going forward in terms of where are we? 1987 is nearly 40 years ago, and we're still not where we need to be. So why does it matter? Well, the Brundtland Report introduces two core ideas that underpin almost every sustainability kind of question. The first is meeting present needs. Building homes and places must work for people today. So that means supporting economic activity, providing safe and healthy environments, and meeting environmental standards that the society now expects. But sustainability is therefore about making sure property performs effectively in the current markets. The second idea is protecting future generations. So decisions we make now should not create environmental damage, social inequality, or environmental risks that future generations will have to address. So in property terms, that means avoiding assets that become unsafe, inefficient, non-compliant, or obsolete over time. From this thinking comes the three-pillar model of sustainability. And this is really important. So the three pillars: environmental, protecting nature systems, reducing carbon, and conserving resources. The social side of it is supporting well-being, equality, safety, and access and community outcomes. And economic is creating long-term stable and efficient and resilient value. So we need to understand what these pillars must be balanced to be sustainable. Focusing on one in isolation can create risk elsewhere. So, for example, a building that is financially efficient but environmentally poor may face future regulation or obsolescence. So it matters because sustainability is now directly linked to property performance and value. Valuers are expected. Jeffrey and I work at the valuation office. As a valuer, we're expected to recognise that sustainability influences risk, demand, operating costs, and long-term viability of a property. So we're not expected to solve the sustainability problems or carry out technical assessments, but you must be able to explain what sustainability means, why it matters. And I think working in the property environment, to be able to have real conversations about how it affects property and how it affects professional advice that you might need to give. So moving on to the problem. So why do we need to live sustainably? Well, who needs to live sustainably? Anybody in an area where you're not, so where you're taking more than is being recreated. So the problem we have is we don't live sustainability. It's sustainability is a holistic approach which takes into consideration the environment, society, and the economy for future prosperity. To achieve environmental sustainability, the Earth's natural resources must be consumed at a rate where they can replenish themselves. Economic sustainability means that everyone has access to economic systems and the resources they need to meet their needs. Everyone has a secured source of livelihood. And then the social sustainability is the universal human rights and necessities that should be attainable by all. Everyone has access to the resources they need to keep themselves healthy and secure and protected against discrimination. So, while the UK has cut its emissions by more than 50% since 1990, the Climate Change Committee says it should extend this to 81% by 2035, this will make a credible contribution to the international goal. So how can we help working in the built environment? It's not all doom and gloom. There's lots of opportunities, but there are some stark stats. So in the UK, 25% of emissions are directly attributable to the built environment. The World Green Building Council has an amazing website. Go and have a look. It's got absolutely loads of information on there. But it shows that worldwide, buildings are responsible for around 40% of energy and process-related CO2 emissions, 50% of all extracted materials, and 33% of water consumption. And then on top of that, they generate 35% of waste. Other environmental impacts include resource depletion, air, water, and land pollution, and biodiversity loss. So by 2050, the global population is expected to increase by 27%, so to 9.8 billion. And by 2060, global building floor area is expected to double from today's amount. So this kind of catapults all of the environmental, social, and economic impacts associated with the built environment. Urbanisation is one of the most significant trends around the world, and by 2050, the United Nations predict we will be an almost exclusively urban species. As cities expand, our sector's depletion of natural resources has a massive impact on the environment. The construction and maintenance of buildings requires substantial energy, leading to unsustainable practices that contribute to climate crisis. With such a significant impact, it is critical that the built environment plays its part in delivering the transformative change needed to decarbonise our global economy. Not only are sustainable built environments a critical solution to climate change, they also create resilient, thriving communities and drive economic growth. So it's becoming more and more important for built environment professionals to upskill, to be able to take part in informed conversations, and get familiar really with kind of green features, methods for reducing carbon, so you can have those good conversations. So quick quiz. So can you put these in order from lowest to highest? So in terms of carbon impact, I will give you just a minute, and then if any, you can either pop it in the chat or you can pop your hands up in terms of where you've got to. Okay, does anyone want to put their hands up, or more than happy to, if you'd rather pop it in the chat? I do have the spoiler slide next with the list, so I'll just see if anyone wants to come in here. If not, I shall move on.
My head above the parapet, Ellen. Shall we go the kilo of eggs then?
So which one are you going? Are you gonna, Jeffrey, are you gonna come in and say lowest first? So the kilo of eggs.
I think the eggs start the lowest.
And then anyone next? Oh, okay. So we've got cement, car, jeans, burger, highest to lowest. Okay, eggs, aluminium, burger, jeans, car, cement. Okay. Any other goes? While people are typing, I'm going to move on. So, Jeffrey, you were correct. So, eggs, 1 kilogram of eggs is first, then the recycled aluminium, then the kilogram of cement, a pair of jeans, then driving 50 miles in a petrol car, and then speed burger. So, in this quiz, it's just really to get that kind of thought process going, mixing materials, consumer goods, transport, and food systems, because they obviously all contribute to emissions in a totally different way. I think it's quite hard to be able to just understand what a kilo of cement looks like in terms of a kilo of eggs, but so most people get the ordering wrong because we tend to underestimate the carbon impact of everyday items. and we forget how completely carbon intensive some things are. So, for example, making a pair of jeans, or how carbon intensive beef is in comparison to other meats. The biggest carbon item on the whole slide is the beef burger, and I think it is surprising how much how many emissions goes into beef, like for the consumption of beef. It's due to methane emissions from cattle, land use conversion, and feed production. But every life cycle study shows beef usually at the very top. Okay, so moving on. So the whole talk is meant to be about ESG, and I realised halfway through my first slides I'd not actually really explained what ESG stands for. So this is something that you do need to know. You need to know what ESG stands for. I think anyone in today's living today should know. It talks about a lot, not just in the property market. So sustainability against the ESG. First up, sustainability. Think of this as the big picture. It's basically doing the things today in a way that doesn't mess things up for the future. Sounds really simple. It just isn't as simple as we'd like it to be. It's broad, it's value driven, and it covers that long-term balance between environmental protection and well-being and economic stability. So then moving on, now we need to compare that with ESG. So ESG is completely different. It's a framework we use to actually measure performance. It's structured, it's criteria based. Lenders, investors, and regulators all use ESG to judge how an asset or a property stacks up. So when we talk ESG, we're talking like EPC ratings and energy data, well-being and accessibility features, governance, so things like compliance, maintenance, reporting, and it kind of ESG gives us all the stuff and the data that we can use to report. And it's really important to remember. So ESG is the framework, sustainability is the goal or the outcome. I think, let me just check. I think my next slide is ESG. So ESG, so the E is environmental, the S social, and the G is governance. It provides a structured way of evaluating sustainability related risks and opportunities in buildings, portfolios, in organisations. It's particularly important for I think people working in the property sector, because ESG is the language used by investors, lenders, occupiers, regulators, and increasingly by the market itself. So the key point to remember is sustainability is the goal, ESG is the framework used to measure it and assess it. ESG isn't about one single metric, it's a lens through which we assess all aspects really of a property, and how they can influence risk, income, demand, and long-term value. So E for environmental. In property context, this I think especially in the UK, includes issues such as EPC ratings, energy efficiency, carbon emissions, water use, materials, air quality, and climate-related risks like flooding or overheating. Let me just see if this one. Here's some essential background on climate change legislation. The starting point in the UK is the Climate Change Act 2008. This is the foundation of the UK's approach to tackling climate change. It requires reductions in carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions, and also requires the UK to adapt to climate change risks such as flooding, overheating, and extreme weather. The Act establishes the framework for how these targets are delivered, including carbon budgets, long-term policy direction. So for property people, this matters because it drives regulations that affect buildings, energy performance, and long-term asset risk. At an international level, so moving to the next, the orange box, we then have the Paris Agreement, which came into force in 2016, a legally binding international treaty with the aim of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees and preferably 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The Paris Agreement is important because it sets global direction of travel, which then feeds down into national legislation, policy and regulation, including those affected in working, I guess, in property and construction. So in 2019, the UK amended the Climate Change Act to introduce a legally binding net zero target by 2050. And I think everyone knows, and we all hear about becoming net zero. This amendment made the UK the first major economy to legislate for net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So for us, the key point is not the detail of the legislation, but the direction of travels that these commitments are driving. Tighter energy efficiency standards, changing to building regulations, increased focus on retrofit, and greater scrutiny of climate-related risk. And then also we've got there's also COP, the Conference of the Parties, not on the slide. This is the annual global meeting where countries assess progress on climate change and agree next steps under the UN framework. These conferences often influence future policy and regulatory changes. I think anyone working in the built environment, we should all have an awareness of key climate change legislation and agreements, understand that they're driving regulation affecting property, and explain why climate change is relevant to risk, compliance, performance, and long-term value in terms of a property. Let's move to S. So S is for, sorry, I went really quickly there. So S is for social value and community well-being. So this encompasses factors such as location, mobility, connectivity, health and well-being. These attributes influence the overall quality and usability of an asset, which can be reflected in property. Social value considerations extend beyond financial metrics, including community benefits, accessibility and placemaking. So, for example, properties that are located near public transport, active travel schemes, or with inclusive design features may attract higher demand than those that don't. Social value, I think, is increasingly recognised in planning, development and repurposing of real property interests, and often requiring specialist expertise. In terms of property valuation, the RICS Red Books notes that not all social factors listed that in the international valuation standards affect real property value. But we should, it's an interesting list. It's the international valuation standards, I think, is very much global. And it's an interesting part because sometimes the social value of a property is quite hard to assess in terms of what benefit does it bring to kind of the social area around it. I think social value is really interesting, and I think the impact of creating something with high social value in placemaking, in planning, it is really, really interesting because it kind of drives community engagement, health outcomes, good local amenities. So that's social value. Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have clicked because you've been looking at a blank slide. I will share these later so you can take them away. So finally, G is for governance. So Governance is often the quiet pillar of ESG, but it underpins everything we do. It's about whether assets, property, ownerships operate within a safe, transparent and legally compliant framework. Starting with safety in a building, does a building meet statutory safety requirements? Moving on to ownership and occupational risk, this links directly to issues like money laundering, sanction breaches or suspicious sources of funds. Reputational impact matter more than ever. If a landlord or a tenant has poor ESG credentials, it can affect demand and therefore value. We've obviously got the minimum efficiency standards in England, which we must adhere to. Governance also includes diversity, equality and inclusion, and inclusive design, which is increasingly becoming important. It also includes, so I think under the governance spectrum, it also includes things like contracts, leases, many of which now do have ESG clauses, such as energy reuse reporting, obligations around efficient operation. And then I suppose finally, governance as a pillar covers broader legal environmental, like the broader legal environment, so which is different depending on the area that you're working with. It includes planning, heritage, licensing, all of these which can materially affect an asset's compliance, risk profile and valuation. So governance must be adhered to, and as a valuer working in the built environment, it's something we do have to now report on in our valuations. So it's about demonstrating that our processes are robust, ethical and accountable. So I've just included a little bit for those who are working towards their APC, the RICS requirements. So what do they now require? So the RICS guidance on the subject, I think, is very much ramping up, and I think they're getting very much more involved to try to really do their bit, I guess, in the built environment. We've heard about the huge amount of emissions the built environment contributes, and therefore, if you can crack the nut with getting our built environment to a point where we're, becoming net zero, I think the battle we're very much on the right path. So there's some documents, RICS documents on here that I'm not going to read them all out. They might be relevant to you, they might not be relevant to you. Like I've said, I will share the slides later. But there's a really good, I think if you are interested in sustainability and ESG, there's a really good practice statement, which is a professional standard, which is sustainability and ESG in commercial property valuation. It's got lots of interesting things in there, and it is worth a read. Obviously the red book, huge document, perhaps you don't want to use that as bedtime reading, a little bit dry, but all of these things, I think, depending on what you're working to, if you're working towards your APC or other kind of qualifications, all of these are really useful and worth read. Also, the RICS sustainability report, I think, is in its third year, and it's reporting globally how we're moving forward in terms of becoming more sustainable. Again, interesting read, very much a global lens in terms of where we are at with sustainability, what needs to be done, and sadly, where we're not meeting the kind of standards that we set ourselves. So future trends. So sustainable features and considerations. So I've just put here some sustainable features in properties and considerations. So these you might encounter, you might encounter them in your own properties if you're doing anything within the built environment, but lots of renewable energy measures such as solar panels and heat pumps, and lots of initiatives. I know the government has recently increased the funding they're giving. If you take gas out of your house and put a heat pump in, I think now has it gone up to £9,000 towards that, to swapping over to a renewable energy source. Other features that support low carbon travel, So EV charging and cycle storage, design elements such as green roofs, biodiversity, deck gain, and sustainable drainage. It also includes building performance measures, for example, EPC ratings, smart technology, water efficiency, and green building certifications like BREEAM. So I don't think any of us need to be expected to design or assess all of these features, but you should recognise that they can influence running costs of a property, occupier and investor demand, regulation and compliance, long-term risk. And I think the takeaway is that sustainable features are increasingly affecting property value and property performance. And we must be able to identify them, understand why they matter, even if they're not actually having any impact on the property. I do think you need to be able to be aware and be able to see them. So market shifts. So the property market is obviously experiencing shifts driven by ESG and sustainability trends. Retrofit demand is increasing as owners seek to improve energy efficiency and resilience. It's also having a knock-on effect in terms of not every property is not always viable to bring a property up to current day legislation, and therefore what happens to that property? Will it become stranded? And therefore, what's the future for properties that are underperforming, where actually it won't really be viable to spend all the money? I think the other thing is with retrofitting, to try to bring people like properties up to say a grade A EPC level, it is expensive, and obviously we're not at a point. There's an awful lot of competing demands, and therefore that is a blocker, and that is something the RICS sustainability report really does emphasise, that the cost of getting to where we need to often really outweighs whether it is viable to an owner. Certified green buildings, such as those with BREEAM or LEED ratings, command price premiums. And recent studies that I've had a look at show that up to 13% higher rents on, say, offices, 10.5% on higher sale prices for BREEAM outstanding properties in central London. Is it because it's best in class? Is it because their running costs are lower than the alternatives? I think there's an awful lot of I think as people need to report more on their ESG credentials, I think that there is more drive, and I think those very outstandingly green net zero buildings are becoming more desirable. The RICS introduced the whole life carbon assessment as a key metric, and the RICS are leading the way with the development of a national database in terms of the whole life carbon of a building. So that's taking it from design right through to demolition, design, build, how it runs whilst in use, and then how then you dismantle it at the end of its life. So I think we need to be aware of future regulatory changes, such as tightening minimum efficiency standards and evolving EPC metrics. And we should be aware that these trends, able to discuss them, their implications for valuation practice, investment demand, and asset management. But I think that it's very much, today's session was very much just a taster into ESG and in terms of where we are at in terms of the property market. So I'll stop there. I will open for any questions, and I will stop talking because I've rabbled on for a while, longer than I've planned actually. Sorry, Becky. Jeffrey.
Well, that's very informative and engaging topic. If you like, I can start off the questions. I think we've seen sort of recent legislation coming in, for example, with commercial residential properties and energy performance certificates. And whilst you've also made reference to the RICS International Valuation Global Standards, where do you think the direction of travel is currently taking ESG and sustainability at the moment?
I think the cost of becoming like reporting is expensive, and I think the direction of travel, I think there's an awful lot of confusion. There's an awful lot of different you have your EPCs for non-domestic property, but then you've got all manner of different sustainability ratings for the commercial property, and I think that's confusing, and I think that reduces buy-in, because I think occupiers don't know which one is right, and I think I think it would be good if we were all on the same page. I think further afield, I think the political market is difficult. It's hard globally to set a standard which everyone can buy in, because all countries are at a different level in terms of where they are industrializing. And obviously the priorities of leaders of those countries have different opinions in terms of how important kind of ESG is. So I think the direction of travel very much in the UK is growing, and I think it's really important. I think there's more emphasis on, investment occupiers to report. Further afield, I think it's mixed, and I think that depending on who's in power and what their priority is for the country, I think that has a huge impact on buy-in and yeah, how important it is. But what I would say is it's not a problem that we can fix overnight. So you can't just decide, oh, we're going to become sustainable tomorrow and it'll fix. It's a total overhaul of so many of our processes. And we've set a standard, and we were the first people who got on board and set that net zero to 2050. And I just wonder, that's only 24 years away, less than 24 years. And there's an awful lot of work to do to get up. I mean, not just our built environment, but a lot of the way we live isn't particularly sustainable. How many people jump in their cars to go less than a mile? If we could get rid of those, those very short commuter bit journeys, that would be something. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're not in a position. It's not something that we can just enforce on people. You have to try to bring people with you and get buy-in. And I think sometimes the problem feels so big, people think, what would my small impact even do? What effect would that even have? So
Thank you very much.
I don't know if I've answered the question there.
No, you have. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from board members that'd like to ask Ellen a question?
I've got one quick one. And just what is your experience with green leases? And is this something we should be considering more across the government estate?
I mean, green leases, I think, are interesting, and I think they're very much taking off as such. So I think they were in their infancy a few years ago, and I think there's more emphasis on that. I think lots of companies, because they're reporting to kind of their board or their shareholders, want to show that they are, doing their bit. And I do think because of that, they are becoming more desirable. I think, lots of things like in terms of their energy source, people are trying to source within their lease. It might stipulate that it has to be, green energy rather than, kind of renewables. But at the moment, it's very much optional. And therefore, I think takeoff is there where people can afford it. I think actually becoming sustainable feels to lots of people like it's more expensive than the alternative. And I think that reduces buy-in. And I think the government have a role to play in terms of trying to drive the right behaviours forward and to try to encourage more people to kind of take, green leases on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from any other board members? I was conscious of the time. Is there any other questions at all before we move on?
Just stop sharing, but I just can't find the button.
Question from Gareth.
Hi, it's a question about the 2020 sort of energy white paper, because that was originally outlined that planned trajectory to reduce the non-domestic minimum energy efficiency standards to EPC B by 2030. But that seems to have stalled, hasn't it, with the current government? Because when the recent edition of the Red Book came out, and we're looking at the ESG features as something we're sort of considering how that's going to affect our properties moving forward. We're looking at, say, revaluation for non-domestic properties.
Yeah.
But is there any updates on that, or what further developments we've heard of?
I think the 2030 kind of marker is still very much at the back of people's minds. But I think the problem is we know that so many properties aren't there and it's quite expensive to get them to that point. And I suppose it's a balance, isn't it? In terms of, if we set that standard and that deadline, what does that actually mean? Is it possible, for all dwellings to get to that point? So I think at the moment it's very much, it's there in the back of people's mind, but I don't think it's a definite. And I do wonder whether they will, be forced kind of to kick that can down the road. We've been waiting a long time for the Future Home Standard. So the Future Home Standard, I don't know if people are aware, so that's reducing the energy outcome of properties by 80% on the kind of 2013 standards. And they finally announced those, and that means that no gas won't be allowed in any new homes from 2028. So this was, I think the Code for Sustainable Homes came out in 2003, and the idea was we would stop putting gas in houses then, and it's taken 23 years to get us to a point where that's going to happen. And I think if you can't get there with your new stuff and there is that delay, I think, 80% is it of our built environment is built. The properties that will be around in 2050 are already built. Don't quote me on that. It's something like that stat. But how are we going to encourage, what incentive are we doing, and how are we making it possible for people to make the right changes when they retrofit to drive that, kind of carbon neutral ready properties forward?
Yeah, it's one of those sort of difficult questions, isn't it? Because I say a lot of properties can't or are unable to actually take an air source heat pump just due to the layout of the property and the space. And look at any of the Victorian terraces, and putting it in that is going to be, it's just not going to work with their energy efficiency, the way that the double screen wall, zero cavity wall sort of spaces there. But also, I dealt with a lot of properties in sort of residential sales, and I know anybody who's maybe bought a property with an air source heat pump underfloor heating generally sees much higher heating bills than the equivalent property with gas as well. So that does also cause a bit of a barrier to entry, unlike the EV car market, which is definitely a lot cheaper to run and definitely a good move forward.
Yeah, because actually in America, they're now, you are running your home electricity from cars. So you charge your battery in your car, and then for smaller houses, you can then run your energy in your house through that. So, I mean, I think there's loads of initiatives out there, and I think the thing is that exactly as you say, it's not fit for everything, is it? You can't put a heat pump in all properties. Also, a lot of our buildings are very old and very creaky, and therefore you need such a huge heat pump, to get to a point where it's at that continual level. But I don't think it's one size fits all at all. But I suppose for the properties that it can happen, we should be doing that now. There should be incentives. The government has increased the funding that they're giving, but I still don't think it's enough, because I think to swap gas out of your property and put in it, go completely kind of renewable with a heat pump, I think would probably cost more than £9,000. Is it £9,800? But I suspect it would be very much more. And people, cost of living is expensive. It's not, if you have to choose between putting food on the table or changing your energy, it's challenging. So I think there's more to come, and I do think the government needs to be strong on their policies, and then they need to be aware that they're going to, I assume, incentivize people to do more to get to where we need to be. I'm conscious we've hit time, but I'm more than happy to stay on and take any more questions if anyone has any. But if not, I can't work out how to stop sharing my slides. I'm so sorry. I should just press the stop sharing button. I found it. Yeah.
Fine, Ellen. Sorry, Becky, just conscious of what you said in the chat. Do you want to keep on going, Becky, in relation to covering those other...
if Ellen's happy to stay on the call, if we have any more questions from our members, absolutely. If you're able to stay, yes, we can stay. I'll still keep the recording going. We'll see how far we get. If we need to do an additional call for the AOB that we had, then we can do that. Or if we have time to get through it, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, I suppose it's just up to our members who we have on the call. If you're okay to stay on for a little bit extra, it's been such an interesting topic, and we've had it's such a shame to kind of cut it short.
Any other questions from other members?
Lovely. Well, I might drop off then. But thanks everyone for your time, for your questions and your engagement. Feel free ever, if you've got any queries, I'm more than happy for you to take my email, and also share the recording to anyone who you think might be interested.
Very much, Ellen, for coming along and delivering that very interesting and stimulating presentation. Basically, I think everybody's enjoyed it. It's been very positive feedback to date.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Have a good rest of your call, and I will let you all go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm just
for
conscious
those.
of time.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Becky.
I was just going to say, just for those, I know a couple of people have dropped off because they need to drop off. If you're still on the call, if you still want us to continue with our AOB, we can absolutely do that. Just to kind of confirm, I will get the slide deck from Ellen and I will share it on our portal page. Once the slide deck and the recording is ready, I'll do another round robin email like I did this morning, just to kind of point with the links. So just to let you know that. So I'll just hand back over to Jeffrey. We can kind of start to go through AOB. If we start to kind of lose people, then we can arrange another call to go through kind of our updates, if that's okay.
Thank you, Becky. Claudia, are you happy to move on to about the PropEL priorities in your survey presentation?
Yeah, sure. Okay, let me share the window. Bear with me a minute. Okay, are you able to see the?
We can.
Yes, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for a few minutes to explain this. I would like to talk briefly about this survey we are launching just to better understand what are the interests, the expectation, and the priorities of our members. So just a reminder that this network is here to support each other, to create opportunities to connect and to share knowledge. And instead of making assumptions of what things are you expecting, we are launching this survey to gather information and to have your input to create and shape activities and things that are useful for all of us. So here is the survey. You press start now. You're gonna go through. Oh, it's not working. I don't know why it's not going through, but it is working. I just
Your link, Claudia, to it in the chat.
I'll just send the link. Oh, that here it is. So it's gonna show you different questions about your current status. What are you thinking to go through? If you are thinking in an accreditation, and different questions really. It's not very long. It's just 13 questions, and I really encourage you to take part on these. The more responses that we have, the clearer picture we can just have about the interests. So yeah, once the survey closes, we are going to share all the key findings and outline how we plan to act on them. So yeah, you will see that you will have an impact. Your contribution will have an impact. So yeah, please take the survey and help us to shape the activities for PropEL. Thank you.
Very much, Claudia. Is there any other questions from other board members about Claudia's presentation and the survey? Okay.
Not so much a question, just
sorry,
a comment that it's going to help kind of I guess, almost drill down exactly where people's routes are going. So I know we've specified every single pathway on the RICS route, and so we can almost clarify who is doing what pathway, what help they might need. Can we pair people up who are doing the same pathway and things? So it's yeah, I think it'll be a useful survey.
I agree with what you're saying, Greg. Just conscious of time. Kefi, unless there's any other questions, Kefi, did you want to start talking about site visits? I know we previously raised that.
Oh, hi everyone. So we had a site visit to Welland Hawks, the HMP prison being built at Welland Hawks in at Leicestershire last month, and it was a great
Kefi?
success. Yes.
I can't hear you very well,
Yeah,
Kefi.
yeah.
Oh,
Could
oh
you
my
turn your
God.
volume up a little bit, please?
Okay, I'll do that. 1 second. Can you hear me clearly now?
It's
A
still
little
the
bit faint
same.
still.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you hear me clearly now?
It's still quite faint. Maybe if you just kind of, I don't know, maybe if you just speak a tiny bit louder, would that be okay?
Oh, okay. Yes, I was saying that we had a site visit to Welland Hawks last month, and it was a success from the feedback we got from the attendees, and they said they were looking forward to more site visits. So we had some plan for this month and next month. So as soon as the dates are confirmed, we're gonna send them out to the proper members. Also, we also had some proper members at local and estates, local authority and property on the 30th of April last month, and the feedback we got from some of the members that attended were really good and said they look forward to more site visits and then conferences and then to meet up and network with people. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Kefi. Was there any other questions from anybody, any other board members at all about what Kefi's just been talking about?
Not necessarily a question, just a kind of request to. I know we're down to 2 members, but obviously we've got the recording. So for any members, if you're aware of any sites that might be of interest that are within your department, that would be good for our members to go to. Please reach out and just let us know. We can see if we can leverage a site visit and get you there. If you can think of anywhere that you would like to go, please let us know. We can't promise that we can kind of get you there, but we can certainly look to see if it is possible. So just a request there for our members, just to let us know what is of interest to you guys and just to keep us posted.
Thank you, Becky. And I think that moves on to the last one, which is just basically any other areas of business that people might want to raise. We've only got 2 other members on the call, Carl and Isaac, but is there anybody else that'd like to raise anything?
I just would like to celebrate an achievement of one of our members. Big, huge congratulations to Greg, which passed the APC, and now it's our RICS membership, our ICS member. So
Thank you
well
very
done,
much
well
for
deserved.
Congratulations, Greg.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you. I found out last Friday. So yeah, really pleased, really happy, and it's a big relief now. And on that, really, if anyone is working through their APC, whether it's next session, next year, and wants any help and wants to ask questions, wants to see my submission, I'm more than happy to. So just drop me an email.
Thank you for that, Greg. And I think, Becky, unless there's any other matters that you wanted to raise, do you want to draw the meeting to a close, or?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I didn't have anything else. I'll just check if either Isaac or Kyle, if you have anything, if you just put either put your hand up or thumbs up, otherwise, kind of, I don't have anything else to add in. Just to say thank you. I know obviously we've dropped some of our attendees have dropped off, but we will have the recording. Just to say thank you again to the board for the work that they do, and thank you to our members. As Claudia had said before, you know, we are running to kind of to support each other. So please do reach out if there's something that you would like us to put on our schedule to do. We can have a conversation again. We might not be able to kind of promise anything, but we will certainly look into and see if it's feasible and achievable for us to do. So just a request out there. And just to say to Jeffrey, thank you so much. One, for taking the role of Quarterly Network Call coordinator and lead. And thank you for taking us through your very first quarterly call. I know Greg did it last time. We've both done sterling jobs. So just to say thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think we'll call it to a close then. Is there any other matters anybody else wants to raise before we also say goodbye?
No, good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Good to see
Brilliant.
you all. Thank you for attending. And until next time.
Bye-bye.
Sorry, Greg, you want to say something?
No.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Thanks
Bye.
very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.